Колеги, доброго ранку. Ми розпочинаємо робочий день. До слова запрошується речник Міністерства оборони України, полковник.
Good morning, colleagues. We start our working day. First, we'll hear from the spokesperson of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, and then we will have a spokesperson from the Anti-Terrorist Operations Zone on Skype. Good morning, dear friends. I'm glad to see you at our briefing. Deputy Minister of the Defense of Ukraine, Yuri Gusev, met a delegation of the Ministry for National Security of Poland, headed by Deputy Minister Maciej Jankowski. The sides discussed the cooperation in military and medical sphere, and they have signed a letter of intentions about the creation of a joint working group on the issues of medical provision of the armed forces of Ukraine and educational cooperation in this sphere. Deputy Minister of Defense of Ukraine said that the training of Ukrainian specialists will become not just the exchange of experience, but also a step to implement NATO standards in the military medicine of Ukraine. Yuri Gusev also informed about the beginning of the experiment at the Defense Ministry on the use of electronic means why the tendering procedures are being effected. As of now, all the purchases in the Ministry of Defense and the Armed Forces General Staff will be done on electronic platform. And the only means to select the participants of negotiations during the centralized purchases of goods and commodities and also services will be the electronic reverse auction. The implementation of electronic bidding at the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine is a joint project of the volunteer task force of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, the Ministry for Economic Development and Trade of Ukraine, Visionary Project New Country, and the System of Electronic State Purchases Prozoro. The competitive environment of electronic bidding will lead to the lowering of prices, which will help to save state finances. The Deputy Minister of Defense of Ukraine on the issues of European integration, Igor Dolgov, took part in the 11th Assembly of the Civic League of Ukraine, NATO Ukraine, and it was called Ukraine and NATO Common Counteraction to Hybrid War. The participants of the Assembly talked about the issues of Euro-Atlantic integration of Ukraine, of the role of civil society in counteracting the information warfare, and also the involvement of Ukrainian citizens to the new structure of Euro-Atlantic security also. During the event, Igor Dolgov underlined that after the beginning of the aggression, the cooperation of NATO with Russia was completely stopped, and almost all the money that the NATO headquarters planned to channel for the cooperation with Russia were transferred to projects in Ukraine. Today, Igor Dolgov will hold a regular sitting of the Joint Coordination Committee on the activity of foreign advisors at the Ministry of Defense and the Armed Forces of Ukraine. In the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, they have worked out the changes to legislation about the creation of the joint state register of those who are obliged to serve in the army. The The draft law to this effect is registered at the Ministry of Justice of Ukraine. Because there will be such a register, people will be, it will be simpler for people to prove their participation in the combat action and get corresponding benefits. On the 5th of July, our state will mark the Day of Naval Forces of Ukraine. At the moment, our naval forces are an important component of the security sector of the state, and they have proved their ability to perform tasks with high quality. Almost 1,000 of naval forces servicemen have a status of participants of anti-terrorist operation on the territory of Luhansk and Donetsk regions. As of today, the Ukrainian naval forces have almost 50 combat ships, cutters, and auxiliary ships. However, 16 units of 16 ships seized by the Russian side during the annexation of Crimea are still not returned to Ukraine. And now I give the floor to the officer of the press center of the headquarters of anti-terrorist operation, Lieutenant Colonel Dmytro Gutsulyak. The situation in the zone of the anti-terrorist operation on the territory of Donetsk and Luhansk regions remains tense at several directions. According to the information of the headquarters of the anti-terrorist operation, the increase of the groupings of militants in the depths of the occupied territory continues, and they also conduct active measures to create shock groupings. The Russian military along our borders and on the territory of our state number over 50,000 people, and there are no numerical changes in the composition of illegal armed formations. They number more than 30,000 personnel. Last week, the mass media published a great number of various scenarios about the possible offensive by the militants. However, they have not become reality because the situation is under the control of the anti-terrorist operation forces. The commandment of the anti-terrorist operation forces is increasing a set of measures to raise our defense capacity. Over the last 3 days, the pro-Russian hybrid bandit formations have shelled the positions of Ukrainian military and the infrastructure of populated centers more than 150 times. Another new cases of the violation of the Minsk agreements on the side of pro-Russian illegal bandit formations took place along the entire demarcation line. They have again shelled the positions of Ukrainian military, in particular from the banned weapons, cannons of 152 and 122, 52 and 22 caliber, 120 millimeter mortars, tanks. And the highest intensity of shelling was in Opitne, Peski, Trохizbenka, Leninska, Stanitska, Luhanska, Starognativka, Mariinka, Mayorska, and other populated centers. Today, in the region of anti-terrorist operation, from midnight to 6 a.m., there were 3 shellings and firings by the militants at the positions of the anti-terrorist operation forces. They have fired from small firearms the positions of Ukrainian military next to settlement Rosadki, Donetsk region, and they also shelled our positions from in the vicinity of Trehizbenka. About the Shirokine settlement, and the cynicism of the situation is in the fact that on the eve of another round of negotiations in Minsk, the militants have demonstratively decided to return to the Ukrainians, destroyed, and people-less Shirokine, well, they say that this is to implement the Minsk agreements. As now the anniversary of the liberation of some regions from terrorists is nearing, we expect provocations on their side. Today, on the 3rd of July, and in the next several days, the cities liberated from gunmen will host concerts, sports events, master classes for children, and competitions. This means Slovyansk, Kramatorsk, and other cities that were liberated a year ago. Thank you very much. Our next briefing is at 10.